Hall, which is where Pauline did her rehabilitation. And he was the director of the wheelchair clinic there. And when Pauline was being fitted for her wheelchair, Chuck was the person who did that. Chuck met me through Pauline, and he quickly learned that I was interested in doing work with a support group for transverse myelitis. To make a very, very long story short, Chuck saw what the potential was for a support network for TM. He invited the officers of the Transverse Myelitis Association to get together for a support meeting that he was having for a different disease community that he was involved with. And through his efforts, Debbie and Paula and Deanne Gilmer and myself met for the first time at that meeting that Chuck had put together. Shortly after that, which was just a tremendously intense meeting for us and really sort of shot the booster rockets off for what we were going to do at the TMA, he also suggested that it would be a great idea to have a medical advisory board, and he founded the TMA Medical Advisory Board and initiated the involvement of other physicians who currently also serve on the board. He has been just a tremendous supporter of the association, and maybe more than anything, has pushed me to go farther than maybe I would have been able to go if somebody hadn't shown me what was really possible. And he's a wonderful friend, Dr. Levy. And we need you to do this in 10 minutes. Ready, go.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I knew that the presentation was scheduled for a half an hour, so my slide presentation probably should take an hour. So what I decided to do was just talk fast. So here we go. What I'm going to talk about today is power assist wheelchairs. And basically, up until very recently, there's been two options in wheelchairs. You can either get you can get a manual wheelchair that you push yourself, or you can get a power wheelchair or scooter that has a motor. I'm going to start by talking about manual wheelchairs. Manual wheelchairs are just great. Wheelchairs themselves are just great and have really transformed the lives of people with disabilities. In manual wheelchairs, they're mechanically simple. You can transport them relatively easily. You get some exercise by using them. And compared to other devices, they're relatively inexpensive. But you can only go as far as you can push. And there are certain environments that are really difficult to push in. Which is pretty much anything that's not flat. Carpets are difficult, grass is difficult, stones are difficult, sand is difficult. And over time, there's a musculoskeletal consequence to pushing. The next set of slides is just some actual data on what happens to people who wheel for a long time. Santosh Lal at RIC studied people with spinal cord injuries, and what she did is she studied inpatients, and when they were first admitted to the spinal cord injury unit, she took x-rays, and then she took x-rays periodically to see what was going on at their shoulders. And she followed some patients up to 15 years. And what she found was that 72% had acromioclavicular joint narrowing, 39% had spur formation, 34% ended up with necrosis, 29% ended up with impingement. If you don't understand these terms, I think that's okay. I think you understand that this is not good stuff. And not only that the changes happen within 4 years after wheeling, and sometimes before the wheelers actually had complaints of shoulder pain. Things were changing before people were complaining. A different investigator, Mary Rogers, looked at the biomechanics of wheelchair propulsion during fatigue. So if you're all hearing this too. This isn't the voice in the head thing, is it? Okay. So pending those instructions, if you wheel and you wheel a lot, you're going to get tired. And can we see the sex slides again while this is going on? This time doesn't count against me, does it, Sandy?
6 minutes.
Jeez. Okay, so if you wheel... Okay. Rogers study wheelers. Wheelers get tired. What she found was that as wheelers get tired, the way they push a wheelchair changes. There's changes in how the push rim is gripped. There's changes in how the biomechanics of the shoulder and the elbow occur. She concluded, the consistent findings of the highest forces at the wrist suggest that it may be slightly more at risk for musculoskeletal types of chronic overuse injury with wheelchair propulsion. The significantly highest joint moment and power values found at the shoulder indicate that it may be the most prone of the 3 upper extremity joint regions to musculotendinous types of overuse injuries. These kinetic results are supported by the incidence of injury in the wheelchair-using population in general. Curtis did a survey of pain for wheelers, and these were spinal cord injury wheelers. You can see that both people with tetraplegia or quadriplegia and people with paraplegia were included. Oh, I lost the slide. The long and short of it, let's see if it's there, is that pain was common. They turn up the volume, or this is like a war here. Cooper is a very well-respected wheelchair researcher and a paraplegic individual. And he summed this up, and the stuff in red is the things that happen if you wheel a long time. Rotator cuff, lateral epicondylitis, cubital tunnel, carpal tunnel. And he says that when wheelchair use is the primary mode of mobility, it may be difficult to provide sufficient rest to allow complete healing. This can eventually lead to fibrocartilage, metaplasia, and calcific tendinitis. I don't think this is a big surprise to people who've been wheeling. So why does this happen? Well, I'm told I have a pointer and I can roll it around. There it is. Okay. The shoulder is made differently than the hip. The hip has a tight approximation of the head of the femur with the hip. It's close, and you can't take most of us could never take your leg around and go all around like this and grab stuff. But you can in the shoulder because it's a much less constrained joint. It's much looser. It's set up to have range of motion, not to weight bear. But the consequence of that is that when you put all your mobility through the shoulder, it's not really designed for that, and it's at risk for breaking down. So then why should you wheel? Why should we be if we think that people who are going to wheel are going to have hand and shoulder problems, let's just get them power chairs and be done with it. Well, power chairs will take you where you want to go. They won't wear you out. You can get features on power chairs that you can't get on manual chairs, and you get rest. Well, there's some problems with power chairs. Some of them are obvious. They're bigger, they're heavier, they're harder to transport, they're more expensive. There actually are some environments that power chairs don't do well in, and I'll show you some of that later. But you don't get exercise. They may give you more help than you want. And most people that I know that use manual wheelchairs don't want to go into power. They want to do for themselves. And power, if you can wheel, most people would prefer to wheel that I know. But wheeling also gives you exercise or a physical activity. And exercise is good for you. There's familiar health benefits, whether it's anxiety, whether it's better glucose control for diabetes, whether it's obesity. But interestingly, those of you who are here because of a spinal cord dysfunction. Exercise probably helps encourage neuroplasticity, and neuroplasticity is the stuff that we think is going to be involved in recovery. Animal studies show that exercise turns on a number of important genes. This slide shows a list that are involved with plasticity, the ability to reorganize, positive metabolic changes, immune function, anti-aging, and then it's got a section for other. One particular protein, I'm just kind of letting you know this for your interest. I wouldn't expect you to be necessarily able to repeat this, but there's a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and it's turned on by exercise. Its regulation is activity dependent, meaning the more you do, the more it's turned on. It enhances synaptic transmission. That's what nerves meet. They have a synapse. They talk to each other. It helps the talk. Long-term potentiation is the circuitry of nerves that underlines memory and learning. It helps that. It stimulates synaptophysin and synaptobrevin synthesis, also involved in this talking of nerves. So exercise is good for your brain. It's good for your ability to adapt. So you need to be active if you can be active. So then what are the alternatives? If manual wheeling is tough on you and it's going to wear you out, and power wheelchair gives you too much rest if you can do activity, then what's the alternatives? The alternatives are push rim activated power assist wheelchairs. And the long and short of them is there's basically three models, and I'll talk about this in a little bit. In this model, the battery is here, the battery's underneath and here, the battery's behind here, and motors are in the wheels or behind the wheels. And when the wheeler pushes the wheel, in one fashion or another, the push rim senses the push and gives some power out, and then it stops till you push the wheel again. So we did a study on this, but as we were getting ready to do our study, somebody else published. Okay, so here's their study. It's that damn Cooper again. Cooper compared the JW2, which is a Yamaha wheelchair, which is now the extender. It's undergone some modifications, but basically that's the wheelchair. And they had their subjects wheel on computerized rollers and also wheel through an ADL course with different obstacles. And they looked at oxygen consumption and also ease of wheeling, and this is what they found. Oh, I'm sorry, the wheelers were age 35 on average and had spinal cord injuries except two with multiple sclerosis. And basically, it took less oxygen to wheel when you had assist, and your heart rate tended to be reduced. They did find some increased ventilation, but that makes no sense, and I was just picking on them. And then they rated the ease of use, and they surveyed 21 items, and so they're going over carpets, doors, inclines, bumps, etc. And there really wasn't, the wheelers did not rate that power assist wheelchair better than their own chairs, even though they're getting an energy savings. So that intrigued my team. So we did a study with elders, and we suppose that this other power assist wheelchair would decrease effort, but would also be acceptable to the elders. And our patients generally were 70 years old and had a variety of different diagnoses and different amounts of time that they used wheelchairs. And this is the prototype. And this wheelchair, it was a prototype from a company called Delta Glide, which is now iGlide. And the battery is underneath the seat, and there's an there's a push rim, and the motors are behind the center of the wheel. So we used EMG, and we looked at heart rate and number of pushes and perceived exertion, and we asked the patients questions about we gave them a survey about how they found this power assist wheelchair. So this is showing one of our subjects with EMG electrodes on. This is a list of the muscles that we surveyed, and mostly they're muscles of the arm and the trunk. Here's a belly muscle, and here's a spine muscle. So let me show you what happened with that. So on this side, the person's wheeling in their own manual wheelchair, and every time they push, the extensor carpi radialis is a muscle that helps your wrist go up. In their manual wheelchair, you see big bursts, and when they have the power assist, you see little bursts. Okay, this is kind of common sense. If you have a chair with a motor, you kind of hope that you don't have to work as hard. The long and short of it is, you don't have to work as hard. These are the muscles that showed significant differences. And again, since time is short and because of that damn emergency thing, I'm just going to keep going. Then we asked them, we made up a survey of their impressions of the wheelchair. So we said, compared to your own wheelchair, how difficult was the power assist wheelchair to push on a level surface? So they're comparing it to their own, and 6 said, hey, that's very easy, and 4 said it was easy. We only had 11 subjects. And on carpeting, 5 said very easy, 4 said easy. And on an incline, 6 said very easy, and 4 said easy. So this is interesting. The wheelchair users in the other study, both studies show that they have a savings in energy, but our study, using slightly different methodologies, shows that the wheelers like the wheelchair, and the power assist wheelchair. And the other one, they didn't see much difference between the chairs. They didn't rate them much differently. Oh, and then we asked them, okay, would you trade your current wheelchair for a power assist wheelchair? And most people would. Would you go places that you don't go now if you had a power assist wheelchair? Uh-huh. We didn't give uh-huh as an option, but that's what they said. Oops. Oh, now we're going to go backwards through the slides to where we were. We're going to try to go backwards through the slides where we were. Okay. So we thought it saved energy. It was acceptable. So why the difference? Well, one is our subjects were older, so maybe they were weaker, so maybe they got more benefit since the chair provided benefit. Maybe it didn't matter as much to these other wheelchair users. And my impression is that the other wheelchair users were kind of the sports active wheelchair users. Our people thought that the power assist was more comfortable, so maybe they were just rating the comfort. But I don't think that's it, because there's only a little difference in the comfort. Our tasks, some of our tasks were harder than Cooper's tasks. So maybe the difference was that the tasks were too easy to show a difference in Cooper's study. Or there may be a difference in how the chairs themselves function. The next thing I'm going to show you is some films of power assist wheelchairs in action. Okay, so I don't know. How many wheelers here have ever tried to go over gravel with a manual wheelchair? How many of you succeeded? Okay, very good. Let's see if we can get this to go. Whoops. Let's try. So this fella has different problems than most of you, probably all of you have, but basically he can't get through gravel. I think he's just not trying hard enough. It looks like he's going to walk with the chair, but he has no legs. He is, oh, right. So power's the answer, right? So here's a rear wheel power drive wheelchair. That's a little disappointing. We've taken lots of different wheelchairs through this course, and most of the power wheelchairs they don't make it. This is the E-Motion. A little effortful, but hey, he's going through. A different gentleman with the extender, the quickie version. You can't tell, there's a little slippage. This is the iGlide. Part of the reason the chair's going up is he doesn't have the legs forward to weight down the front. He ordinarily uses like little wrist or ankle weights, but he didn't bring them that day. Okay, same scenario. I'll show you manual first. He's stronger than I am. It's clear that he's working hard, isn't it? The E-Motion. The extender. Now the iGlide. And open terrain. What impresses me about this is that as an ambulating person, this stuff doesn't seem to be a big deal. I walk on grass all the time. I walk on inclines, and I don't really think about it. I'm not aware that I'm using more effort. But when I sit in wheelchairs and try to do the same terrains, I get knocked out. My shoulders are sore after a minute or two. Now I have the wimp factor, but even so. Oops, okay. Sometimes I'm stuck for a model. This is the extender. This is the E-Motion by Albers. Still a little bit of work, but hey, not very much. This one doesn't work at all. Oops. Imagine him rolling easily up the grass and then coming back down. Okay, wheelies. that expression on my face is woohoo. iGlide was the second, and the first one was the extender. So there's 3 systems. They actually are very different in how they translate your hand signal into wheeling power. The e-motion, basically you can set the push rim to give you a certain amount of power every time you push the rim. And that's it. You have 10 settings, and if you push it a little or if you push it hard, it's going to give you that certain amount of power out. It is the easiest wheelchair to take the wheels on and off, the easiest power assist to take it on and off. You have multiple settings. You can change. You have one wheel with one setting and one wheel with another setting if you have unequal hand or arm function. You can put it on lots of different wheelchairs. And since you can put it on lots of different wheelchairs, you can get seating and positioning to a greater extent. But each wheel weighs 22 pounds, not including the battery. And in open terrain, it's not the best, in my opinion. The JW2, which is the extender, the quickie extender, is now available in a rigid and folding frame. The rigid frame just came out in the last week or two, and I think it's what you have. What do you have? The G2? R2, but I'm not positive. That should be available soon. So you can put it on either of 2 folding chairs or I think 2 rigid chairs. Its weight capacity is 250 pounds. You can either get one with more power or less power. The power doesn't change, but the way it works is the harder you push, the more juice you get out of it. I left out a feature. It actually has a wire that connects one side to the other, so that when you push, it kind of tries to say, what do you need to do to go straight? And it helps keep the wheelchair straight. It's less heavy than the e-motion, but a little heavier than the iGlide. And it's hard as hell to get the wheels off. I have film on that, but I'm not going to show it to you now. Its handling in open terrain is pretty good. The iGlide only comes in a rigid frame. Its rigid frame has a nice balance. The balance issue may not make as much difference since the other chairs are coming out in rigid frames now. It's the lightest of the 3, and its system is the most complex. It asks 2 questions. The more you push it, the more power you get out, but then it measures 250 times a second to see what the heck the wheel's doing. And if you push it hard and the wheel's going well, it says, oh, we're doing well, you don't need more help. And if you're pushing hard and the wheel's still going slow, it gives you more power. That's called a closed loop system because it gets feedback. The extender has an open loop system, and the e-motion basically is a switch. Every time you hit it, it gives you a certain amount of power. There's only a few sizes to choose from. Weight capacity is less. It's lighter of the 3, but it's still heavy for most people to put in their cars themselves. It takes a little more learning to get used to the iGlide. It's, for many people, harder to use on flat surfaces at first than it is the other 2 systems. Power assist wheelchairs give you a chance to get exercise. You can go more places. They probably decrease stress since you're not working as hard, probably make your shoulders last longer. They are a dignified method of mobility. That's my opinion. I don't have papers to back it up, but my conversations with users lead me to believe that it preserves the sense of independence and identity that manual wheeling does. And I hope I haven't offended any non-manual wheelers. There's this principle in rehab that you give people the least amount of help that they need, but you give them all the help they need, but not more. So power assist is more consistent with rehab principles than to just give power. If people can make it in power assist is more consistent with rehab principles, in my opinion, than power. I love power chairs, and but but this is a new possibility for us. And there's the obligatory gator. I'm from Florida. Thank you very much for your attention. There's going to be a workshop along with all the other workshops. They start at 5:30. Do you remember where it is?